Welcome to Time of Death. I'm your host, Ris.
And I'm your host, Dee.
And welcome to a September 25th rendition of our show.
Spooky.
A spooky show.
Yes.
Anyway, if you're new here, welcome. We are two nurses that love to talk.
Yes.
We love to talk true crime.
Yes.
We like to focus on cases that have a heavy medical influence to them or cases that feature a medical professional as the perpetrator or the victim.
Absolutely, Ris. Thank you so much. We are also enthusiasts of the Halloween season.
We are Halloween enthusiasts.
Yes.
For those of you who don't know, we actually host a ER book club that Dee is part of. Actually, but anyway, so a bunch of ER nurses and actually anyone really in the medical field or surrounding areas can come and do a book read with us. We only have a few members, but we are strong. And for our October book, it's actually Misery.
Yes, I'm still waiting for my package to come in through Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm living dangerously.
Me
It was
too.
supposed to come in today. Today's the 25th.
Oh, yes.
It was, remember?
It's a little late.
I'm going to have to do something drastic.
For those of you who don't know, it's Misery by Stephen King, the horror MVP.
Yes, you know he wrote like up to 10,000 words a day. And he would like be on crack. Oh, not crack. Cocaine. Be on cocaine. Coked out. Stephen King, you're one of my most favorite writers. I remember reading Cujo as a child. I'm still freaked out by St. Bernard's.
Was he a St. Bernard?
Yeah.
These thoughts presented in this case are of mine and Dee's alone, developed with research that we've conducted on our own, and these are just our thoughts and opinions. Okay, the case for today, I'm just going to get right into it. It has to do with Visine.
How are you going to tie that to St. Bernard's?
This is the Visine murder. Do not give Visine to dogs.
Oh!
I don't know why you would ever
Yeah, why would you?
give Visine
But
to
it's
dogs.
still a good rule of thumb.
A Vietnam veteran and motorcyclist named James Blackledge was riding his motorcycle in a neighborhood in Lake Wylie, South Carolina on July 21st, 2018, when he saw a woman running through her front yard waving at him. When he slowed down, she told him to call 911 because her husband had fallen down the stairs and he was probably dead. So James calls 911 immediately, and the woman runs across the street to the neighbor's house. And this house belonged to a man named Terry Floyd. Terry was friends with this woman and her husband. This couple consisted of Lana and Steve Clayton.
Good old Lana Del Rey.
They have been married for 5 years by the time of Steve's death in 2018. Steve was 64 years old. He was a business owner. He owned some like physical therapy clinics, that kind of avenue. And he was very successful. He was a millionaire. And Lana was 53 years old, and she actually was a nurse. I don't know what kind of nurse. I couldn't really find out what kind, but she was a nurse. So Lana and Steve met online in 2010, and they married 3 years later. It was Lana's second marriage, and Steve actually hadn't been that lucky in the love department. He'd been married 6 times.
Ooh.
This would be his 7th wedding. But they fell in love. In general, people believed from the outside that they had a happy marriage. A friend of Steve said that Steve fell for Lana's caring spirit. So Lana tells Terry, "It's Steve. It's Steve," gives him a quick rundown, and then the two of them hop into Terry's golf cart.
What?
Why
a golf
I don't know
cart?
why that's so
Why
funny.
a golf cart?
He has a golf cart.
But why not a car?
It's literally across the street.
I know, but why not take the car or walk?
They had to get there ASAP. Terry needed to see if he
Then
had
take
a
the
pulse.
car.
I don't know. Either way, they took the golf cart, and I'm sorry I'm laughing because it's really not that funny. Whipped over to Lana's, and Terry rushes in. Lana sits on the porch, and Terry finds the body and immediately feels for a pulse. He can't find one, and Steve was dead. EMS arrives at the scene. Everyone is consoling Lana. She is in distress. She feels guilty. And everyone, including police, were saying, like, it's not really your fault. Like, these things happen. They were kind of assuming he had either fallen down the stairs or he had collapsed at the bottom of the stairs. Lana says 3 days before his death, he was dealing with some pretty bad vertigo. He had been staying in bed in their bedroom on the second floor, complaining of dizziness and nausea before his death. Lana had been keeping a close eye on him. She was a nurse after all, remember? And she made sure all of his supplies, water, meds, and personal items were all at the bedside within easy reach. So he didn't have to move and get up much because when someone has vertigo, when they move around, the dizziness gets a lot worse. So that morning, Lana had checked on him around 11 a.m. and then she had gone outside to mow the lawn. She said in regard to why she did not start CPR is that she couldn't turn him onto his back to start CPR because he was too heavy. Mm-hmm. So police end up calling a coroner who sends a deputy coroner over to their house. And the deputy coroner rules, okay, there's nothing suspicious. There are no wounds on the body, no bruising, abrasions, no really evidence that would indicate trauma from the fall as the cause of death. But he did have some discoloration. I didn't see like what kind of discoloration. I'm imagining maybe some cyanosis or maybe some pallor, pale discoloration to the skin that can occur with an MI. So they're thinking, okay, it's probably an MI. At this point, there's no need for an autopsy to look into what the cause of death was. And they decide, okay, now the body can be released to a funeral home. By this time, word is spreading, and Nick French, Steve's nephew, comes to Lana's house. And Nick rushes to Lana, hugs her. He's supportive of her, but he starts getting suspicious pretty quickly as he hears the story of what happened. He's thinking, she's a nurse. She didn't start CPR, basic life support. You're gonna, if you find a, unconscious body, you're going to look for breathing, feel for a pulse.
It's very suspicious that she could not roll him over.
Yeah, it is really weird. Like,
I don't care. You feel like when you have your loved one and like, I don't care how it's your husband.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too because I don't know, he is a little bit of a bigger guy, but I feel like in the moment, and it's different, I can't really say because I've never been in this position, but I would try, the best I could to roll him over. Or, she ran out as soon as she saw the body. Why don't you ask Terry or James, the motorcyclist, to come in and help move him onto his back? You know what I mean? I think maybe she had some health issues that caused, that made it difficult for her to move this person over. But at the same time, if you can't do it on your own, you have people right outside who you ran out to get immediately after you found the body. Like, why wouldn't you just have them come in and flip them over? It's just weird to me. So Nick is also thinking there's 2 different phones in their house. Like, why didn't she just call 911 in the house? And another thing he was suspicious about is that Steve always had his phone on his person. He always had it on him, and his phone was nowhere to be found, which was just odd as well. But regardless, he was being supportive to his aunt. And the deputy coroner asks Lana if she had given any thought to funeral arrangements. And Lana puts her head in her hands and said, I have no idea. And the deputy coroner says, well, maybe we can take the body to the morgue to run some tests if you want. And Nick pipes in, maybe that's a good idea. And she immediately looks up and says, that funeral home, the one that's right down the street, let's take him there and have him cremated. And so she had gone from one end to the spectrum where she can't even fathom making that decision right now to a very decisive statement about what to do with the body. And it's just super weird. And Nick thinks this is super odd as well. Nick decides he wants to call another one of Steve's nephews, Chris, to tell him about Steve's death. But Lana says no several times, and she actually ends up yelling at Nick when he asked as well. But Nick goes upstairs and calls Chris anyway, and Chris calls Steve's sister, Rosie. And Rosie is shocked, but she had actually been trying to get in touch with her brother for 3 days. And she was a little on edge because he wasn't replying to her, and that wasn't like him at all. Nick also looks in Steve and Lana's bedroom and is appalled. It gave the vibe that he had been stuck in the bed for days, and the bed was soaked in urine, and there was actually even a puddle of urine underneath the bed, showing he'd been it's been saturated in urine for an extended period of time. And Lana is kind of unfazed when he brings that up, and she said, well, that happens with his vertigo spells. It's normal for him to wet the bed. So a investigator actually saw this as well and was kind of suspicious of this too. And investigators also thought it was weird that his phone was MIA. So Chris comes to the house after he finds out from Nick, and he tells Lana, we should find the will to see what he wants done with his remains. And Lana shuts him down and says, there is no will. And he's like, yeah, actually there is. I've seen it with my own 2 eyes. And Chris actually was the executor of the will.
Wow.
So Lana is like, Chris, shut up. There is no will. She didn't say shut up, but Chris, back off. There is no will. That kind of, vibe. So time is going on. This is still the day that Steve had died. And Nick, Chris, Lana, their family were in the kitchen, and she was droning on about how Steve had abused drugs. And she is kind of laughing per their reports as she tells them the stories. And Nick and Chris are like, no, that's not right. I've never heard him ever using any illicit substances. Lana said he used marijuana too, and she had mentioned to a family member that she didn't want an autopsy because she didn't want that to show up positive. So after that, they all leave, and Chris and Nick and their partners are super uneasy. They're like, Lana's involved. We can't put our finger on it, but she's involved. 2 months prior to Steve's death, Steve had actually told Chris that he wasn't happy in his marriage. So Chris was somewhat aware about, Steve's inner thinking about his relationship with Lana. It wasn't really what it appeared to be to the public eye. And even more concerning is that 2 years before Steve's death, Lana accidentally shot him in the head with a crossbow while he was asleep. What the heck? You know what I mean?
It took me a second to process that because that's so outrageous.
Isn't that outrageous? So for those of you, I laughed towards the end. She shot him in the head with a crossbow while he was sleeping.
He slumbered. She sounds unhinged.
Yeah, so it was considered minor somehow, and no charges were filed. Both parties agree it was an accident, but it was super weird. It's really weird, especially considering what is happening now.
I wonder if their relationship was strained after that.
I think it sounds like
after that or before that. I could not live with someone after we did that.
I know. So, it's just absurd to me that she could like 2 years prior, this was considered an accident, what reason would you have for having a crossbow in your bedroom besides like self-defense? You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just insane to me. The next day, Chris and his wife were going to go over to Lana's to find the will. And Lana ends up telling them, do not come here. This is my house. He was my husband. I will handle everything. Like, don't you dare even bother to come over here. She didn't say that last part. I added that. Lana schedules Steve's cremation to occur the next day. So this is 2 days after his death. And Chris and Nick are aware that this cremation is creeping up quickly. So they decide we need to be fast. And they call the coroner. They demand an autopsy and a toxicology report. And they do this without Lana's knowledge. So the coroner does end up doing these tests and the autopsy. And the results were surprising, to say the least. In the toxicology report, there was a poison present. Guess which poison?
Arsenic.
I already told you.
Everyone goes and go.
Arsenic.
Interesting. Okay,
So,
let's see how many poisons we can come up with.
arsenic.
Arsenic.
Cyanide.
Cyanide. Mercury. Pluto.
Bleach.
Bleach. That's a good one. Chloroform.
Well, isn't everything a poison if it's used improperly? One could argue.
That is a great quote. That's a quote of the night. That is. Depending on how you use something, anything could be poison.
That's true.
Right, Bubba?
Bubba knows. So the poison that was present is called tetrahydrozoline. This is found commonly in Visine eye drops, along with some other eye drops and nasal decongestants. The coroner was shocked because they're like, it wasn't that common of a drug. So people use Visine to reduce redness to the eyes.
Well, doesn't Bubba get Toradol in his eye drop?
Yes, Bubba does get Toradol eye drops. He has cataracts in both eyes, and the Toradol is to help prevent like a glaucoma situation. When it's taken properly in the eyes or in the correct route, Visine isn't as harmful as if you were to take it by mouth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Ingesting Visine is more common with kids who don't really know what they're doing sometimes, and they may accidentally drink some Visine. There are cases where it can be used as suicide attempt. And one case involves this man. He was 76 years old, and he drank 120 milliliters or 8 bottles of Visine in a suicide attempt. And I'm fighting for my life right here. Bubba keeps trying to get in.
Come here. I'll give you a kiss.
What do you have to say?
What do you have to say? Stop giving me my eye drops.
I won't ever stop.
Come here.
He goes to the ER after the suicide attempt. I don't know if somebody called or if he maybe called, but either way, he suffers severe cardiac and metabolic dysfunction as a result of taking all of this Visine. And luckily, he was admitted. He was treated medically and quickly for his side effects of this medication, such as atropine for severe bradycardia. And he ended up actually surviving. Wow. And he was admitted for an inpatient stay, and then he was discharged on some Zoloft. This I found in
little old sertraline. Does a lot of good.
Old sertraline. So that was one case that I read about. The concentration of the tetrahydrozoline was 68 nanograms, which was a very significant amount in Steve's blood. Something I didn't know is that tetrahydrozoline is more commonly used now today as a date sexual assault drug, kind of like a roofie. And because it can cause, people to become very obtunded or super sedated and they don't really recall what's being done to them. Tetrahydrozoline activates the central alpha 2 receptors, causing one to experience nausea, vomiting, bradycardia, or low heart rate, dizziness, and confusion.
Want me to take them?
No. And in large quantities, it can cause respiratory depression. And this drug is odorless, it's tasteless, it's colorless, so it's very easy to
He will not stop. He's a man on a mission.
So it's very easy to, potentially drug people with this drug. And it's sold over the counter. You know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to get your hands on and use it nefariously. Mm-hmm. So the coroner at this point is like, okay, forget the MI or myocardial infarction or heart attack. It's definitely poisoning from the tetrahydrozoline. The coroner at this point calls the sheriff and they call Lana in for questioning just to get more input on the death. Did he overdose on purpose with intent to hurt himself, or was something more sinister happening?
Sounds pretty sinister.
So Lana suspiciously mentions right off the bat that 3 years ago, someone told him that taking Visine would help him poop. So he would put...
Oh my God. Stop.
So he would put a couple drops into his morning coffee. So he'd been doing that since finding out from this person every morning. And police are like, okay, let's go over the tox screen. There is a drug called tetrahydrozoline in his system, per the toxicology report. And Lana immediately says, okay, yeah, that's the Visine. So she knew what this chemical was found in. And she's saying, maybe he tried killing himself. He had a mood disorder. She goes on to say that she walks on eggshells around him and that he could be really nasty to her. She claimed he was verbally abusive. So police press her a little bit and say it's kind of a suspicious death. And they ask her if he had his Visine that day. She says she doesn't really know, but she said he always keeps the Visine on him. And police are like, well, wouldn't you know he had Visine by the effects of it? Like, by his symptoms that day? Like, you're a nurse. You don't know? And she said, I didn't think Visine was anything that would be serious to your health.
To be honest, I don't blame her for that. I mean, I know she was the one behind it all along. But
yeah.
I don't know that confidently that I would recognize the sign of Visine toxicity.
Especially, like, if he's been taking it every day for years. I don't know. But
it's definitely suspicious.
It's suspicious that she knew that tetrahydrozoline was in that. I mean, you can argue she's a nurse, so maybe she knew that, but I never heard of that drug. And also she just saying right off the bat, like, offering the info about the Visine from the get-go. They didn't even tell her the results of the tox screen yet. So that was weird. And she goes on to say, I feel like you guys are, doing your job and you're, wondering if I killed my husband, and I did not kill my husband.
Red flag.
So she goes home at this point, and investigators actually go there too, because guess what? They have a warrant to search her home and her cell phone. And she actually keeps talking to them, and they keep recording their conversation. And it's at this time when she actually confesses I had this little table set up next to the bed with his tissues, his urinal, his, medications, his Visine. And I just saw it and I was so angry. I just took it and squirted it. I think I put the whole thing in.
Whoa.
And the cops are like, hold up, wait, what did you say? They asked her the whole bottle. Like, did you put the whole bottle in? And she says, I think so. I squeezed it hard while he was sleeping. She said she was really angry and fed up that he was relying on her to help him with everyday things that he couldn't do on his own because he was ill, like helping him to the bathroom. She said that she wanted him to have diarrhea, to suffer. She said all of this stress and resentment kind of built up, and she just did it. She also starts claiming at this point that he was physically abusive in addition to being verbally abusive. And just a side note, later on, family, friends, and previous partners of Steve's all were shocked about these allegations. She even goes on to talk about the crossbow shooting, and she actually says that it wasn't an accident. She said he was coming at me and I picked it up and shot it at him to protect myself. So police leave her to start arranging for a arrest warrant, and it was then that she tried to kill herself. She took pills and she put the gas on, and she wrote a note saying that she was guilty, that she was feeling guilty for what she did, and she could no longer live with herself. And so a neighbor found her body. She did not die. She was sent to the ER, cleared medically, and she was actually then placed in police custody. On August 31st, 2018, Lana was charged with the murder of Steve. She had pled guilty to tampering with food and drugs, involuntary manslaughter, and on January 16th, 2020, Lana was sentenced to 25 years in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow. I'm glad justice was served for this family. Yeah. This was a very elaborate scheme. A lot of research had to have gone into this. So I'm happy that we got an answer. Unfortunate that he passed away.
Yeah.
But I'm happy that what was done in the dark came to light.
And what's interesting is that Visine has been used in other crimes as well. There was I think there was another murder soon after Steve's death that occurred nearby, and it had to do with Visine as well. And I think people have tried poisoning others with Visine. It's just crazy. Also wild when, drugs are used improperly, the devastating consequences. Like when you think Visine, you don't think of anything, that lethal. I mean, I didn't until today, I did this case. I didn't hear ever about it being used for, deadly reasons.
Very crazy. But again, glad that we got some answers.
Yeah. So, thank you all for tuning in. We're so happy that you joined us tonight. If you liked this episode, please rate us, review us. Let us know if you'd like to hear anything in particular. We are open to suggestions. And have a awesome day. And we'll see you next week.
Absolutely. Peace out. Enjoy your spooky season.
Did you think we forgot to do?
We could never forget. We could never forget.
We could never forget. Did you think we forgot to call it?
We could never forget to call it.
We could never.
Call it. Ris.
I'll call it, all right.
Call it.
The time is 20:45. That is 8:45 p.m. It's a late night episode.
So
for
46.
those 46. Huh? 46. So it's not gonna matter that much.
No, it does matter. We have this 47.
Oh my god.
Precision.
All right. The
Accuracy.
time is 20:47. That is 8:47 p.m. for those of you who do not know military time.
Get with it.
We're out. Peace out.
Bye.
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 Say bye, Baba. Say bye, Baba.
Bye, Rissa.
Meow.